Coming up on episode 117 of the Behind the Back podcast, divisional round, Niners, Seahawks on the road, revenge game for week 18. Potential return. Who knows? Ben and I break down the Niners news, break down all the key matchups, what he's looking for from this Niners team, what he's ready for, what his score is for this game, and I also give my score as well, but that's not as important. Then we pivot on over to the Philadelphia Eagles, where they received some news of their own. Kevin Patullo is no more. What is our takes on that? Coming up for impending free agents, some of the coaching options that are out there, what news we have in Philadelphia before we play little final thoughts and just finish off with our picks for the weekend. With that being said, y'all, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are hosts. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben the Jet. Reds, Ben, I got my playing clothes on. I don't really have to worry about anything sports related. It's been peaceful. It's been nice. But you, on the other hand, you have a very important game coming up on Saturday. How are you feeling?
I'm excited. I'm stoked. I am amped. Dude, no words can really describe exactly how I feel right now. Like, it's been a special season. I'm excited to be here talking about the 49ers in one more round. I'm sorry that it had to come the way that it did through the Eagles, through Philadelphia, but I am feeling real good.
Heck yeah. So as you guys heard in the intro, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Just because the Niners whooped us last week doesn't mean that there's not news in Eagles camp. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about, but we have to start with the divisional matchup. Obviously, the Niners going to Lumen Field in Seattle to get their revenge following a tough week 18 loss. Let's set the mood. Let's get down to, what news has been going on around the Niners camp. Let's make the injury report. That's probably a book long, but let's get going on that before we get to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, so this is a big game, obviously. This is the divisional round. This is a round where you've already had to, if you're not the one seed, go through your first playoff game. The 49ers in this instance obviously had to go through Philadelphia. That's a tough place to play. Now they turn around and go to Lumen Field, where they've had some recent success, but it's still not an easy place to play. So the stakes are high. This is a win or go home. Obviously, this is the playoffs. And the winner of this goes on to the NFC Championship game. You got one more dance, and then you're on to the big dance. So there's big implications on this game. And Seattle, this is a good way to start, is on 13 days of rest right now. The last team they saw was, in fact, the 49ers. So let's start with this rest advantage and maybe the rest disadvantage for the 49ers. The 49ers, on Saturday, when they play the Seahawks, will have played 3 games in 13 days. Back-to-back games against teams with 2 weeks of rest. The Seahawks will have had 13 days off to the 49ers 5 days. And the 49ers are even more injured than they were prior to even week 18. So cards are already stacked against us in every way, right? And I want to kind of talk real quickly. I want to bounce it over to you because I want your opinion on this. You look at the other 2 NFC teams who are set to play on Sunday, the Rams and the Bears. Those 2 teams played last Saturday, meaning those 2 teams are getting 8 days of rest. But the 49ers, again, get the rest disadvantage. Marcos, do we have the worst luck out of any team in the NFL, or do we deserve everything that's coming our way? Is this wild or what?
Honestly, it makes no sense. When you told me you guys were playing on Saturday, I was like, how are you guys playing on Saturday again? And I think it is frustrating that, it does feel a little bit inherently unfair. And I don't understand how the playoffs are laid out in this kind of fashion. And I know that when they added the 7th team, it made things a little bit more difficult. It opened up the Monday night game and things like that. But it didn't make sense to me to begin with that you guys are playing this kind of schedule. and this is a however many billion-dollar industry, and they can't even freaking get their schedules, aligned to make it as fair as possible. You guys were already going to go with a major disadvantage. It's a shame that they couldn't give you a normal week of prep. And I know that has been something you guys got the late bye, and it all of a sudden the schedule lined up to where it just mitigated that entire bye. So it was definitely not cool from just an outside perspective. I would have hated it if this was my team. The Eagles last year, it was a Sunday schedule. Like, it was straightforward the whole time. So it is weird to have to see your team have to do that in real time. And I guess my only argument for, this is why that Week 18 game had a little bit of stakes, because imagine what could have happened if you guys had the bye and they were the ones that had to play in round one. It would have been an interesting, that's something to think about nowadays. But now this is the situation you're in, and it's frustrating. I do think that you guys kind of got screwed over a little from the scheduling.
Yeah, and Shanahan kind of said it best right after that Week 18 loss. He was like, we're going to have to do this the hard way. And this is probably the hardest way you could probably ever do it, right? So, I this whole thing is wild to me, this whole rest advantage and disadvantage. And it's been like this for a number of years, even if you just look at the scheduling. We've talked about it, even the regular season. Your team has gotten screwed. My team has consistently gotten screwed on that end of it until this year when we actually had the advantage. But this is kind of how it shakes down sometimes. So let's move on real quick and talk about the injuries that are going on. So we're recording this as of Wednesday, meaning Wednesday practices happened. So these are the latest. The two that have not practiced this week and probably will not practice are Luke Gifford and Jair Brown. Jair is dealing with that hamstring injury that he sustained early in that Eagles game, and Luke Gifford is dealing with his quad. So likely they're probably not going to be going for the game. We'll see as the rest of this week plays out. As far as the limited participants, you've got Yetur Gross-Matos, Ricky Pearsall, it's a big one. We'll talk about him later. Dominic Puny, Keon White, Trent Williams, who was actually a full participant, and D. Winters was a limited participant. Now there's one more guy that made his appearance, and you saw me kind of smile there because I had to skip over him, who made an appearance. We haven't seen him since October, and this is probably the fastest turnaround on a broken ankle that I've ever seen, something that required surgery and everything. Freddie Ruger, a.k.a. Freddie Warner, is back at practice for the 49ers. Talk about timing. Like, this is wild. The fact that he is able to return as quickly as he did is insane, first of all. And the fact that the 49ers were able to string together a win in Philadelphia and get this kind of really, this is an advantage 49ers from a momentum standpoint. This is huge for morale. Fred was playing limited participant in practice today. He was bouncing around the field. There's videos of him looking as explosive as ever. He's amped. People are like, he looks good out there. Like, it's exciting to have him back. So this is big from a morale standpoint. And we'll get a little bit more of that here later, but that's the injury report for the 49ers, dealing with some injuries. However, it's likely that a lot of these, especially the limited participants, I think are likely to play. I saw Ricky Pearsall even out there. He was going through some drills in his limited participation, but he looked good. He was able to do some stop and go, some cut routes, and coming out of it, you don't see any limp or anything. So, if he checks all the boxes, he's going to be a go. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't go on Saturday. So let's move on and talk about where the 49ers might have an advantage. We talked about where they have the disadvantage. Let's talk about the advantages. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Now, I want to toss this over to you after I give my spiel, because I think you have some good opinions on both these quarterbacks. This is the Purdy versus Darnold game. And we saw it in Week 18. Purdy wasn't great. Darnold was good. He didn't win the game for the Seahawks at all. Brock has not lost a game on Lumen Field. He's 4-0 going into Seattle. Brock has a completion rate on that field of 69%, 958 yards, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 105. safe to say he loves playing in Seattle and Philly, apparently, right? Sam Darnold is 0-1 in his playoff career. Been in the league a little bit, hasn't really gotten great shots, great opportunities. Got one with the Vikings last year. That ended piss poorly. And now he's here on a great opportunity again with Seattle. Can he be better now? We'll see. Right now, I'm not trusting that trend. He tends to play poorly on a big stage. So Purdy has 4 game-winning drives in his 7 playoff games. One of them being last week. All right. So this is an interesting battle. This is 2 quarterbacks who are in a lot of ways very different but similar. And the reason I say that is, Darnold has credited Purdy for the time that he spent in San Francisco, and credited him and said he really helped me kind of slow the game down, really helped me just kind of gain a better understanding of my reads and everything and progressions and so on. And he's credited him for a lot of where Darnold is at now. Purdy obviously was the starter over Darnold. Purdy's in an offensive system that is excelling with players who aren't necessarily stars, right? I mean, Demarcus Robinson for 111 yards when he's only done it 3 times in his career. A lot of that has to do with Purdy and his execution. So from an execution standpoint, he's great. And Purdy in big games is great. Darnold, like I said, yet to be said. So Marcos, opinion on these 2 quarterbacks, on this battle. Are you expecting anything out of one or the other? I'm expecting a good game out of Purdy, and I'm expecting not a great game out of Darnold. Is that safe to kind of feel that way based on the trends?
I would say yes. Purdy needs to have a big game in order to. I think he needs to play a little bit better than how he did in Philadelphia to pull out this win. And although he did play great in Philly, I think that I'm a QB wins guy. I respect that more than any other freaking stat. And there is something to be said. Purdy being undefeated in Lumen Field, playing his best on that field. Versus the games that he's lost in that they have been at home. So it's been an interesting, Purdy feels like I think he embraces that rivalry a little bit. I think it's great when your quarterback understands the stakes of a divisional rivalry, and having it in the playoffs is even more important. And he's also a huge part of experience versus him and versus Darnold is Purdy has played in Seattle in the playoffs before. This isn't a first time thing for him. So this is a great opportunity for Purdy with his experience. That's what made the Niners dangerous, regardless of their situation. You look at the Eagles and the Niners, they were the teams that and even the Rams, you could view as like, oh crap, they are dangerous because they've done it before. So it's hard to just say, oh, the Niners played poorly against them on week 18. So, it's automatically going to be the same. You can't doubt, I thought that what the Seahawks did well in week 18, the Eagles were going to be able to replicate in the playoff game. And the Niners adjusted. Purdy adjusted. Shanahan adjusted, which gives me more confidence that they will be able to do this against Seattle. It's not going to be a 3-point game. They're not going to be held to 3 points. And for Darnold, he has to be we have to see it to believe it kind of guy. In the playoffs, we saw he had a really great regular season. Same thing with Minnesota last year. Justin Herbert, who's been killing it in the regular season for years now, is the worst playoff QB in history right now. One of the worst. And only thrown 2 touchdowns. Jawan Jennings has more, right? We've gone through the stat that was rolled around on social media. So Sam Darnold has to prove it. And, he's been doing kind of that this year, and I want to give him his credit. Like he won the big game against the Rams. He beat you guys in a week 18 spot where he failed last year. So he's taken steps, and they absolutely can win this game. They are favored for a reason. It's at home. And the odds are, in their favor in that sense. So Darnold has the ability to win this game, but the Niners are the team playing with house money, and I trust Purdy more. And obviously, it's because he's done it before. And for everyone who says, he hasn't, Ben just laid out the stats in front of you of what he's done in the playoffs. You can't count them out. So I expect big things from Purdy, and I don't know what to expect from Sam Darnold because with against your defense, he should have some success. But the Niners defense has stepped up, so I'm really excited to see how these two quarterbacks play.
And there's changes from this team, not just adjustments, but, physical player changes from where we were just in week 18 that we'll kind of talk about. So love the analysis. The next advantage is going to be the Shanahan versus Mike McDonald. I genuinely believe Shanahan at this point in the season and in his career is a better coach, and he's just more built for this moment. Obviously, the cards are yet to be played. We'll see how they lay out. But, since Mike was hired by Seattle, the series is 2-2. Mike has been dubbed the Shanahan tree killer based on how he's been able to handle all these guys. And Kyle Shanahan, he either misses the playoffs or makes it to the NFC Championship game throughout his, coaching career with the 49ers. So safe to say, in that sense, you could kind of say based on history that the 49ers are due for a NFC Championship game appearance. We'll see if that plays out that way. But you look at what Kyle Shanahan has done this year, considering all the injuries. I mean, I can't stress it enough. And I'm not going to go down the list of every single player. We've talked about it countless times. You look at how he's adjusted game to game, week to week, practice to practice with all these guys going down. And he put his team in a position to be the number 1 seed. And based on how crazy the NFC was, the 49ers fell all the way down to 6th, right? So this is one of those seasons where nothing went right for the 49ers, but everything went right. Right. Because Coach Shanahan has been extremely locked in. This is the best year that Shanny's coached. And this is the biggest year of growth, I think, from Kyle Shanahan that I've seen. This is the evolution of Shanny right before our eyes in a lot of ways. And, we talked about last year, it was like, does Shanahan have what it takes to really stop beating himself in these big games and kind of get away from that? And I mentioned going into the Philly game, like, I want you to stop coaching to not lose a game. I want you to coach to actually win a game. And he did that in Philly. And he's going to have to do it here against Seattle as well. So I'm going to give the advantage, biased or not, to Shanahan. I think Shanahan's got the more experience right now. He might not have the roster, but he's got the experience and he's got the cojones to get this thing done. So I'm giving the advantage there. Now, this is the big one. Fred Warner's aura. Look, this is a wild week for the 49ers. They've got so much prep going on. They just lost George Kittle. Like, there's so many reasons why morale could be totally down. Yeah, you won a playoff game. That's freaking awesome. But you got to go to the number 1 seed, whole bunch of disadvantages, so on and so forth. Freddie's back. He's bracket practice for the first time since October. The morale boost before a crucial game against the Seahawks is huge. Players were not prepared to see Fred on the field so quickly. Kalia Davis was quoted saying, "I honestly didn't see him until later in the walkthrough, but I felt something. I felt the aura. And then I peeked behind me, and it was like, whoa, he's got his jersey on." Also said, for someone like Warner, who really sets the standard here, I would do anything to play with him again this year. This is the boost the 49ers need in order to get ready for a big game on short rest week. So this, is, to me, feels like the biggest advantage out of the other ones that I just talked about. Because the other ones, you can call it bias, you can call it whatever you want. Fred being on the practice field for this team, not right now, but just in general, boosts this team from a standpoint of just being ready for a moment at any given time. And the fact that he's able to come back for a week of preparation for what's going to be the biggest game of the season is huge. So this Fred Warner aura, I have a lot of faith that it's going to carry the 49ers into this week at level standards, meaning that rest advantage, disadvantage isn't going to play as much of a factor as we think it will, because this team is going to be moving off of that motivation of knowing Freddie's either, whether he's really out there Saturday playing or not, he's out there with them. And if he's not out there playing Saturday, you know you got to get through one game and you're likely to get him back for this next game. Huge. Huge.
It definitely is huge. And I think that Fred, because his presence is going to be on the sideline, he'll be even more motivated than ever. He won't be sitting up in the box. He'll be down there on the field with the guys motivating and coaching them if he needs to, if he's actually not playing. There is a possibility, too, that the Niners could try and do maybe a limited snap count with him. Like you and I talked about this off pod. Like that could be a possibility if you were playing him maybe 20, 30 snaps. That's enough for him to make a difference in this game, even if that's on early downs or if you want to play him exclusively on third down. However they want to approach it could be possible. But obviously, I mean, we talked about like this roster and your linebackers, even Fred at 80% is probably still the top 5 linebacker in this league. So it's one of those things that if he does see the field, it would be a very cool moment, even if there's going to be some rough patches at first, just because, he hasn't played in a minute, he needs to adjust. But I mean, it won't be much of an adjustment for a guy like Fred. I do believe that kind of boosts to morale, having a guy, especially like you said, since you guys just lost Kittle, it's been an emotional roller coaster. So losing one of your leaders only to potentially have one of your other leaders come back to help try and save the day, it's going to be huge for you guys. So it's great news to hear. Happy to see that he recovered so quick. I mean, testament to his work ethic and his his drive to really heal himself and get back here.
He's the Wolverine, bro. I mean, he really is. It's really wild to see. It's special. He's not a human in a lot of ways, but yeah, just having him out there for a week of prep like this, not just from an aura standpoint, but also just getting this linebacker group ready for this moment is something that I don't think we can stress enough how big that is. So love to see it. I'm so stoked he's back, even on that practice field. Let me throw some quick nuggets out real quick. And then we'll get in some key matchups and then keys to winning and move on. So some fun nuggets in this one. 49ers are one of 3 teams to never have consecutive losses in the 2025 season. So pretty special season from that standpoint. The last win against the Eagles marked the 11th straight win for Shanahan and the 49ers in the wild card and divisional rounds, which also plays into that NFC championship game, streak that he's on. And the 49ers, is we kind of talked about this off the air. I didn't recognize this, that they're on a streak of making it to the NFC championship game or missing the playoffs entirely past just the Shanahan era. It's been 22 seasons since 2011 that they've been doing this crap. So pretty wild. Can we win a Super Bowl? That'd be great. So that's crazy. Also, another crazy one is with that win against Philly, the 49ers now have the most wins in playoff history. They have 40 wins in the playoffs, which is the most in NFL history. Pretty wild. The 49ers have beaten all the remaining NFC teams this season and all of the 5 seeds above them in the standings. The Seahawks, the Rams, the Bears, the Panthers, the Eagles. So when you, and this is a good way to kind of move on to the matchups, when you look at that, Shanahan has found a way to win one of those games at some point. He won one of the Rams game. He won one of the Seahawks games, right? He won a big game in Philadelphia. And against the Panthers, Brock throws 4 picks, but he trusts his quarterback. His quarterback trusts his own arm, and they continue to go out and they find a way to win in that second half. And that Bears game was just a gunslinger v. gunslinger the entire time. That was game of the year. So to think that the 49ers are 7.5-point underdogs in this one, considering they've beaten the Seahawks, considering everything that's going on, I think it's really disrespectful. But I'll digress a little bit. Let's talk some key matchups real quick. Linebackers versus the Seattle run game. Seattle's run game was what worked the best versus the 49ers in Week 18. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet combined for 33 carries for 171 yards. The 49ers also missed 17 tackles against Seattle in Week 18. Fast forward to now, Eric Kendricks and Garrett Wallow are upgrades at linebacker since Week 18. I think D. Winters and Tatum Bethune were banged up to a point where it was like that was why they were missing as many tackles as they were. So from that standpoint, to have fresh bodies at the linebacker position is huge. And now they get to kind of work with Fred Warner this week. Johnny Holland has got his linebackers. He's the linebacker coach. He got his linebacker core ready fast since adding them to the 53-man roster. He got them ready for Philly. They were huge in Philadelphia. Those two combined, Wallow and Kendricks combined for 21 tackles versus Philadelphia. Kendricks is out here making pre-play adjustments and closing holes while Wallow is consistently in the right spots and tackling well. So this linebacker core is going to be massive when it comes to stopping this run game because the defensive line doesn't really have it. You know, you don't have Michael Williams anymore, who was really your edge setter on the outside from that standpoint. And, you know, this is a nice, really nice offensive line that we're running into. So from that standpoint, it's going to be up to your linebackers to make the play. And that was why you saw so many missed tackles last week. I think it's going to be in week 18. I think it's going to be a lot different this time around. Second matchup, the SF Hyena versus Jackson Smith Najigba, round 2. Now that is SF Hyena is Diamador Lenore for all you Seattle fans who don't know, but I'm sure you do because you've heard the trash talk by now. And let's talk about that last matchup, since for whatever reason Demo got flamed after week 18's game. Doesn't really make sense considering JSN finished with 6 catches for 84 yards. Not a bad game. But let's talk about Demo in coverage versus the Seahawks in week 18. 31 coverage snaps, 2 yards allowed, 0 touchdowns, 65 coverage grade, 79.2 passer rating when targeted, and the 1 penalty, which was a penalty. But JSN's going on the podium and saying, you know, can't talk to all my fans. Interesting. I am stoked for this matchup. I really am. This one's a good matchup. You know, Demo is ready for any moment. He's ready for every moment. He has proved a few different times this season and throughout his career that he's ready for the big matchups. I think he's absolutely ready for this one too. So I'm looking forward to that matchup. And that's, you know, those are the two big, you know, key matchups for me in this one outside of like the coaches that I'm looking at. And I'm saying, if you lock down this run game for Seattle and you make life difficult through the air for Sam Darnold, JSN, Cooper Kupp, this is a winnable game. Now, that's not easy to do, right? You're in Lumen Field. You're the rest disadvantage. There's a whole bunch of things stacked against you. But there's every reason to believe, based on history, based on the momentum, based on the, you know, everything stacking up right now, that the 49ers are at least going to make this a ball game and not 7.5 points. So I'm looking forward to these matchups. I'm curious to see how the 49ers can hang around. Marcos, any thoughts on those before we move on to the keys to winning?
No, I think those are really great points, and I think you're right. I think if the Niners dare Sam Darnold to beat him in this kind of spot, that's where the Niners are going to have the most success. And I think they did a really good job. Again, we talked about it post game. If you haven't checked it out, you can check out our post game pod from the Eagles Niners game. But I thought that the Niners won a lot of those reps against Saquon in the run. And yes, Saquon had 100 yards, but I felt like there was bright spots where you guys were able to get into the backfield. So I do think that if you bring that level of play to this game compared to what you did in week 18, I think that gives you guys a much better chance. And yeah, it's not just Diamador Lenore either. It's going to be Upton Stout. I saw he had great reps against Devontae Smith last week. He almost got a pick 6. Like, if he's peaking right now, this is a great opportunity for the back end to really make life difficult for Sam. So I am really excited for this defense to try. And again, you guys held them, despite them running all over you, held them to 13 points. So, like, if you guys can do anything like that, I think you held them to 13 points both times this year, or, you know, both games that you played them in the regular season. So, like, if you guys can score more than 13 points. So this is where it's going to be on the offense, hopefully, as Ricky Pearsall back in the fold to really, you know, explode. And just, I think if you guys get like 21 points, you can win this game for sure.
Yeah, and, you know, last time around, I talked about it in my Week 18 post game where I was depressed and crashing out and everything. You know, I talked about just how big of a deal it was not having Ricky Pearsall in that game. You know, you didn't have Trent either, but like not having Rick, a guy who spaces out a defense, forces you to account for that deep ball at any given point. Like, he is your separation receiver. To not have him out there and to rely on the guys that, you know, basically won it for you last week, but against a defense like that, it's tough to do. If you have Rick back and he's healthy this week, this is a different ball game from an offensive standpoint. And especially the way that this team has found success. And if Demarcus Robinson puts together a game even half as good as what he did last week, this team is going to put up closer to 20 points than the 3 points that they put up. So, you know, just from that standpoint, having those two guys back, Trent and Ricky, is going to be massive for this team in order to put points on the board and make things difficult. That in and of itself is going to force Seattle to do something that they haven't done well against the 49ers, and that's score the ball. So if you can put a little bit of pressure on them from that standpoint, then Robert Saleh just has to dial up a good enough scheme to be gritty, bend, don't break. And this game is the 49ers to win. So let's talk about these keys to winning, because that's kind of a key. But the big one right here, what did the 49ers do really well in Philadelphia? They started hot. They came out the gates firing. And it caught America off guard. I'll be real with you. I didn't expect them to come out punching like that, because I saw, you know, the week prior what the Seahawks defense, who is very similar from you know, a personnel standpoint and a schematic standpoint, I saw what they did to the 49ers. And I was like, dang, bro, like, this can be a tough game. 49ers came out punching. They punched you guys in the face first, and that took a lot of the air out of the stadium. Obviously, you guys answered with a great score. Missed the extra point because Jake Elliott needs to go. But I don't know what it is about these Jake kickers, bro. But starting hot in Seattle is going to be key in this one, because the 12 is going to be real loud. And they don't want any Niners fan in their stadium. They've like put out tweets. They've been saying stuff saying like, if you're thinking about reselling your tickets, make sure it goes to a 12. Why? Because the 49ers are the best traveling fan base in the NFL. I'm sorry, but per Vivid Seats, it's the facts. This is a fan base that consistently shows up for their team. And in Seattle, they have been close to a 50% majority before. So is it going to happen this time around? Probably not, because I think Seattle is this is one of the better teams they've seen in a number of years, since the last Super Bowl they had, which was, I think, 2014. And so this time around, I think, you know, the 12 is going to want to be there absolutely for this run. But if you take the wind out of the stadium early, you're going to have a better chance at really giving yourself, you know, an opportunity in this game to kind of take it to them in a lot of ways. I'm not saying they're going to blow them out, but you can get a little bit of a lead. Again, we know what Shanahan looks like when he's down. You get a lead and Shanny gets comfortable and continues to put his foot on the gas, you're going to win this game. And that's the next key. Kyle needs to continue going deep in his bag, and the team needs to continue executing. This team has executed at a pretty high level, especially in the last, you know, if you factor in the last 6 weeks, overall, they've executed at a very high level, considering everybody that they've been swapping in and out. They need to continue doing more of that. The last key, keep the Seahawks team in front of you. Limit the missed tackles, continue to bend, don't break. You're going to give yourself a chance to win. So those are my keys. My final score, I got the Niners winning, bro. It's just not. I can't come on here and say that I'm a faithful and not take the Niners to win, especially in a game like this. I got the Niners 24-21 with a 3-point victory in Lumen Field, moving on to the NFC Championship game where they are all too familiar with.
Now, I love that. I think this is going to be a great game. Those are excellent keys, and I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, I'm a guy that values, again, winning is my favorite stat. Winning is my favorite thing to experience. And I value streaks, and I value things of that nature. The Niners have a lot of things leaning in their favor in that regard. Yes, the roster odds are stacked against you, but this is a Niners team that has fought adversity every single game this year. And it's just hard to count you guys out with your experience. And I value that a lot. And I think Purdy's experience and results in Seattle against Seattle in these big moments matter to me more than the Seattle Seahawks being the number 1 seed. And I mean, let's face it, since this 7 playoff bracket became a thing, the number 1 seed in the NFC has yet to win the Super Bowl. So this is a or even get to no, has yet to win the Super Bowl. So it makes me, we watched last year with the Detroit Lions choking a game to the Washington Commanders, a team that was way more inexperienced than them, but the Lions were decimated. So I don't think it's the same way for Seattle in terms of they were that red hot of an offense. I think that Sam Darnold is going to have to win Seattle this game, and that's what I'm not confident in. So I'm really feeling the Niners in this game, and I think the Niners defense is going to come through again. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game, but I think, the score sounds more than it should, but I think because this is how I think the circumstances are going to play out. I think it's going to be 21-17, San Francisco.
Oh, I like that. And yeah, dude, like my final bit of trash talk here. Yes. What has Sam Darnold done? He's thrown picks all season long. Like, it hasn't been a great year from him. It's been a great year from the offense. And I'm going to do the Brock thing. It's the guys around him, because it is the guys around him in a lot of ways. But that damn defense is really what has won it for them and put them in the position they're in. It's not that offense. And I know the numbers, offensively might say otherwise. But Sam Darnold, I have no reason to believe that Sam's going to come into this game and dominate the 49ers. Based on his history in big games, and even in that Week 18 where you had to have it, you had to go out there and win the game, he was asked to just not lose the game. And that was so evident. You put up 13 points. You're going to have to put up more than 13 to beat a 49ers team this week. That's just quite simple. And that's why I got this 49ers team taking this victory, dude. Like the disrespect that I have seen all week long for this 49ers team, who has found ways consistently throughout this year to get a win, and you take them as 7.5-point underdogs. Bet.
No, that is, and yeah, 7.5 point. I was so impressed with Brock last week and his ability to, even though he's throwing 2 interceptions, even though, things aren't going his way the whole game, the Niners don't care. They were taking chances. They were ripping the Eagles with big plays. And if they take that same mentality this week, it's going to be really hard if you're daring Sam Darnold to keep up with you, he's done it again in spots, but this is just something we haven't seen in the playoffs before. So that's what I'm most excited for. All right. So any final thoughts? All right. So we got a big game for San Francisco. Good luck to you on Saturday. This is going to be a huge game, and everyone stay tuned for his post game after the fact. All right. So let's pivot on over to Philadelphia. They were doing their locker cleanups, since the Niners put belt to ass and sent them home. So, there's been a lot of good stuff coming out there. They finished Hard Knocks. Yeah. And literally the last scene of Hard Knocks, spoilers for anyone who haven't seen it yet. It's literally just Jalen and Nick Sirianni in the room. And Jalen's aura farming, staring off into the distance with Nick Sirianni looking at him. And Jalen's like, "We'll be back." And Nick Sirianni's like, "I have no doubt." And I do believe that personally, that this is the mindset of the team. And it started with them making a major move, and that was them. It wasn't a firing, but they relieved Kevin Patullo of his offensive coordinator duties, which was something that a lot of the Philadelphia fan base, myself included, has cried out for. The reporting was weird. He was fired, but he's also apparently still might have his old role as the passing game coordinator within the organization. But I mean, if I'm him, it's basically the Eagles saying, "We don't believe you're a good OC, and you're probably never going to be an OC here again. So you can either take your role, or you could probably go somewhere else, but that's up to you." And Patullo's Nick Sirianni's guy. And I think the trend that the Eagles, we talked about trends with the Niners. The Eagles have had this trend in the Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts era where it's either they lose in the wild card round. Since Jalen's been a starter, they've either lost in the wild card round or they make it to the Super Bowl and have won one Super Bowl. So that's been the past 5 years. It was wild card loss to the Bucks, Super Bowl appearance against the Chiefs, wild card loss to the Bucks, Super Bowl win against the Chiefs, and then wild card loss to the Niners. So it's been a weird trend, and the wild card losses have come with the past 2 have come with rookie inside the team hires, internal hires, and the Eagles are going to shift their attention to 5 potential candidates. There's probably way more than 5, but the 5 that have been talked about that I'll throw up here have been Mike McDaniel. Ben and I talked about this one beforehand because we thought Mike McDaniel was going to get fired week 7, but he saved his season, at least in that sense. Todd Monken, the former OC for the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, John Harbaugh got let go, so he is a name that is out there as well. And then you got Brian Dable, the New York Giants former head coach, has a history with Jalen, coached him in college, has a relationship with Sirianni as well. Even though they may fist fight if they end up on the same team together, it would be an interesting spot for him. Another name was Kevin Stefanski, former Browns head coach, but it looks like he might get another head coaching gig, but he did have an interview scheduled as well. And there are some other names on there that the Eagles have been interested in, and this is a great time. You know, yes, the Eagles lost in the wild card, but this Kevin Patullo thing would have lasted longer. And part of the issues with the Eagles' Super Bowl runs and struggles to find replacements after the fact is that all the good coaches are taken by this time. By the time February rolls around, a lot of these teams have made a decision. And the hope is that the Eagles make a decision on their offensive coordinator soon. They're conducting interviews, and there may be, there's going to be a lot of noise in the next couple of weeks of who's going to be the head coach, the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Oh, yeah, and Cliff Kingsbury was another name that was thrown out there as well as a potential OC candidate. So, if me personally, I was okay with the Kevin Patullo hire at the time last year. Oh, yeah, hire from within. And it's the same mistake. You know what I realized? This Eagles team pushes for the Super Bowl every year. And if the recipe is, yes, they can win with a new offensive coordinator every year, so long as this offensive coordinator has answers, has a system that's competent, we're going to be just fine. So if they bring in a guy like Mike McDaniel, he might not stay. But that's the reality of the Eagles. So I'm cool with so long as you bring in an experienced offensive coordinator, that's how I feel. But that's some of the names. How are you feeling, from an outside perspective? What do you think of the Kevin Patullo move?
Well, I love the Patullo move for you guys. I hate it for the rest of the NFL because it means you guys are going to be competent again. But you made an interesting point right at the end there, which was like, bring in Mike McDaniels. There's an odds that he goes as a head coach somewhere else shortly after. Then that's 12 offensive coordinators and 12 seasons for Jalen dating back to college. You guys have a knack of hiring guys, even who aren't necessarily head coaching candidates at the time, but then making them look like head coaching candidates, like a Kellen Moore, for instance. And then he moves on, And so it's a good problem to have, but it's a bad problem to have. And it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, it wasn't like you guys fired every offensive coordinator that Jalen's had, right? Correct. You guys have a history of, for the most part, hiring the right guy for the job to the point where it makes you guys look so damn good that somebody goes and poaches from you guys. And I mean, good organizations have this problem. The 49ers have this problem. They're going to have this problem with Robert Saleh in the offseason. And this has happened for a bunch of teams. So what's nice is this is the perfect time for you guys to have moved on from Patullo because of how many options there are. I mean, I saw an article earlier. I'm actually going to pull it up so I can kind of reference it here. There was an article earlier that pointed out 11 offensive coordinator candidates for the Eagles. And this is by NBC Sports Philadelphia. And so I encourage any Eagles fan to go out there and read the article because it's good info. And it gives you even a list going down of like a Mike LaFleur and going back as far as Frank Reich, who the Eagles fans know Reich really well. So there's options out there. So from that standpoint, like I think you guys are going to make the right decision. Sirianni is a smart enough coach to make the right decision this time around. I think options were limited in a sense last year. Yeah, there were options out there, but it was also like he hired internally because, Patullo's been there. He's been a product of the system. He was part of the passing coordinator, passing coach. So it's like, it kind of made sense from that standpoint. It didn't pan out. It's a learning lesson. So I think the rebound is going to be big for you guys. And I mean, look, you keep your quarterback one. Obviously, you still have Devontae Smith. You still have Saquon Barkley under contract. You know, there's questions about AJ's, long term here in Philadelphia. He might have played his last game considering he gave his signed jersey to Q at the end of the season. But we'll see. But, what I can tell you is you guys consistently outside of this year have a good offense. And it's an offense that you always have to worry about. So that kind of a thing is going to keep you guys in the running. And then if your defense just continues to do what it does, another staple of Philadelphia, you guys are going to be fine. But the offensive coordinators there are a plentiful of them.
Right. So I thought the timing of it was really good. And I think, the main issue was that, Nick Sirianni was responsible for those internal hires too. But I think once Howie Roseman gets more involved, and he was involved in the Kellen Moore hiring, he was involved in the Shane Steichen hiring. Yeah. So it's like when Howie gets his hands on it, I think the annoying part about this is that the Eagles didn't learn their lesson from 2018. They did the same thing. They had Frank Reich. He left and got a head coaching job, and they hired from within, and it was a disaster. They got to the Super Bowl in 22. Shane Steichen gets poached, and they hire from within with Brian Johnson. It was a disaster. And then after Kellen Moore leaves this past season, it was a disaster with Patullo. So I think the Eagles need to stop doing this every time we make it to the Super Bowl and if you're going to hire a new guy, just get somebody with experience, in my opinion. I think that the Eagles have shown that there is at least a floor when you have somebody who has answers with an offensive scheme. And I think that, they might have been contributing to, is it Jalen's needs? Is it Nick Sirianni's needs of this offense? Like, what's this offense really about? But I'm excited for the prospects that we have, because any one of these guys that they bring is going to be an improvement. So I am excited to see who they decide to bring in.
I do think, and I don't know if this is being talked about enough. You can tell me otherwise if it is. I do think whoever the next offensive coordinator is has to be a Jalen guy. And what I mean by that is like the offense, the offense can't be ground heavy. Even though I know that's how you guys have run things and things like that. But like Jalen has never been the feature of an offense. And I would be curious to see what it looks like, because he's a great leader. He's a guy who makes right decisions. Like he's for the most part safe with the football. I want to see him in a system where he is like the main product of it. And at that point too, it's likely that, that playbook opens up a little bit more for him and things get easier for Jalen. I think a lot of Jalen's, struggles have more to do with the products of the system than it does with actually him as a quarterback. Right. And I don't think that's talked about enough. So I think like getting like a Brian Dable, somebody who has that experience with him before, and somebody who values his arm in a way that it should be valued, is a key. That's just something, in my opinion, I think needs to be looked at.
No, I agree. That's a fair point. And I think that, that's why I like some of these options that are out there, because I think as offensive coordinators, these guys can do a lot more with less and maximize their talent. Right. And I think that's what, to me, is the most important thing, is like, even if we do lose AJ, and the point with AJ is like financially, I don't know if we can move off him this year. And that's going to be the conversation, if the Eagles are going to eat the dead money, or if bringing in a new coordinator that will potentially say, hey, we're going to throw you the ball a little bit more, AJ. Like, you're going to be running wide open. Like, you don't have to do all the hard work. Just catch the ball and don't drop them in big spots, and we'll be good. So who knows, maybe that it will be enough to change it, but it'll be interesting to see who they bring in. There's gonna be a lot of news in terms of interviews and stuff like that. This is gonna be what's gonna be on the Eagles' plate for the weeks to come. So that's exciting news. And then the next step is you got to go to free agency, and there are big names that we're gonna have some roster turnover. We had turnover last year. It's just a part of the business. We have a lot of great young players, but there are players that we need to pay. And the big five right now that need to get paid are Dallas Goedert, Nakobe Dean, Reed Blankenship, Jalen Phillips, or Jahan Dotson. And there's some other names as well that I'm not really thinking of right now, but those are the big ones that are like, oh, okay, we either need to have a replacement plan in place, which is why I think a guy like Nakobe might not be back next year, because we have Jihad, right? We might pay Reed Blankenship instead of Dallas Goedert, and go for maybe drafting a tight end. Who knows? the Eagles have some decisions to make this year. Do we keep Jalen Phillips because he was extremely productive with us? And technically, he played. If they didn't rest him in Week 18, he played the full 17-game season this year. So for the injury concerns of it, he survived this year and did a whole year. It was pretty much how like he kind of shook off his injury concerns in a way that like Saquon did, in my opinion, where Saquon came here and he was healthy. So I wouldn't be mad if they paid Jalen Phillips, but they also have Jalen Carter to think about. They have Reed and Cooper to think about here in the upcoming years. So how much money can they shell out? The Eagles already have this dead void year cap that's like $465 million in future voids that they have to pay. I don't understand all of that, but it's the Eagles financially always try to find a way. So free agency is going to be huge. I think the Eagles might try to go for, maybe AJ is a piece of a trade to get a different player, to get a different impact player. Who knows? Maybe it's draft capital, but the Eagles have 8 picks in the draft this year that they can work with. So the Eagles have still, as usual, plenty on their plate in the offseason that they can use to rebound and be just fine. So that's kind of the free agency news going around Philadelphia. Is there any one player that you could imagine, that was a great fit in Philly, but probably, won't be there next year?
Maybe Nakobe. That's hard because with the Eagles, they need to kind of assess what direction they want to go. In a lot of ways, it's a directionless offense at the moment, and the defense, you kind of know who you want to keep. The thing I'm kind of playing with is the Jalen Phillips. To me, that's the most important. Nakobe Dean's important, but Jalen Phillips really opened up the defensive game for you guys after the trade deadline. That was a very underrated league-wide trade for you guys. Your pass rush got so much better. It allowed your cornerbacks to make less mistakes. You didn't have the CB2 issue as much. So it really benefited you guys. And for, you lost some guys previously off your defensive line, and the defensive line regressed a bit. That was a boost for him. So I'm looking at a guy like Jalen Phillips, and I'm like, I feel like you guys got to re-sign him. I feel like he's got to be one of those guys that you re-sign. I know the injury history, but it's panned out well so far. Backup quarterback Sam Howell. Sam Howell is awesome. He's another free agent. You question if he'll be back. There's a lot of names. Grant Calcaterra is on there as well. And I mean, he has 62 games with you guys, 22 starts, bad run blocker, but through the air, he makes some plays. So again, it's hard to kind of gauge the free agency signings and who you're going to bring back and let go of until you lock down who your OC is and you lock down a direction that the team wants to go. Because at that point, once you get those things settled in, that was the first thing that the 49ers did last offseason was dial in who their coordinators were going to be. They got their Brent Boyers and they got the Robert Saleh. Once they did that, they were like, all right, bet. And mass exodus, right? And it's worked out. So it's a retool year. Again, not a rebuild. And it's a rebound. You mentioned rebound in there in one way or another. And I think this is a perfect way to kind of call this upcoming offseason for the Eagles.
Absolutely. And to, with the start of the offseason, I want to put a bow on the end of this past season and just give my grade for the Eagles for the 2025 season. A lot of ups and downs, but again, reigning Super Bowl champions. They made it to the playoffs again. They won the division back to back. That was big. They ended that streak. That was a cool moment for that. It makes their schedule next year a little harder. So, that's definitely something that, is something that they are also not used to, that anyone in the NFC East isn't used to, having those back-to-back number one schedules. So that's going to be an interesting journey for the Eagles to take. But I believe that they'll bounce back next year. And this year was I would say a slight disappointment in the regard that they definitely underachieved, and it felt like a missed opportunity this year. They had the opportunity to win back-to-back. They had the experience on their side. They had the opportunity to win that Niners game if they played, but they played the way that they have all year, and that was playing like at a C+ level all year. And that's kind of the grade that I give them, because the defense was amazing. Although it had some rough moments, some rough patches, they could have propelled us to a Super Bowl run if our offense was competent enough. And although the offense showed flashes, it never amounted to much, and especially when it mattered the most. So I thought Jalen individually had a good year given what was provided to him, and all the drama that he had to navigate through with his receivers being unhappy with the system being what it was, and Saquon not performing at the same level, and the offensive line regressing altogether. And, to be able to win 11 games and get into that spot and win big games along the way, it still was successful, and it still gives me confidence in them going forward. So that's kind of where I would sit with them for the 2025 season, would be a C plus. So that's how I felt.
I think that's a fair grade. Yeah, it's always going to be hard to go back to back. One team has ever done it, and they got lucky in a lot of ways. This season for the Eagles was going to be tough from the start. And it is kind of unfortunate that you guys have the 1 seed again, because it does make things difficult for next year. But, overall, I think you learned a bit about your head coach. You learned a bit about, especially who your offensive coordinator was. You learned that wasn't going to work. And I think that, Sirianni especially grew a bit this year, in the sense of, sometimes the best option isn't just bringing up somebody directly under you. You sometimes got to go a little bit external and figure out what the best, way to go is. And that's why I'm curious to see kind of how this whole OC thing shapes out. But, it's a failed season is missing the playoffs. And you guys were in the playoffs, and you had a chance at the 2 seed. You pooped the bet on that because you guys sat all your guys. So I don't feel too bad about it, but, yeah, I don't think it's a failed season. I think C plus feels about right. I can't really play with a B minus, because I think you could play B minus if that first playoff game against the Niners went the way it should have. And again, I agree. Like, the defense did its job. 19 points, you should be able to outscore that. Yeah. Especially when you have the kind of talent you do on your team. But I think leadership from the coaching standpoint was what hurt you guys the most this season. And I think there's, ways to grow from that. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Getting a veteran coach in the locker room, I think, is going to make a huge difference. I think the guys are at an age now where they're looking to be challenged. They're not looking to be coddled. Like, they want more experience. Like, they're veteran guys that you can, be real with nowadays. You don't have to cater to their feelings anymore. They just want to win. So let's talk about, now we'll put a cap on the Eagles there. So let's move on. Final thoughts real quick. We're just going to rip through. Obviously, I got a lot of games wrong this weekend. I thought the results were going to be different than what they were. So it shows my ball knowledge going into this. But we are going to go through our matchups here and who we think are going to win this weekend. So let's do the NFC matchups. We got obviously we already did with the Niners Seahawks, but who do you think is going to win the Rams versus the Bears? And I'm going to say the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win this one.
Yeah, I got the Rams as well. I mean, the Bears, this game is going to be awesome. I really do think so. And it's in Chicago, so I haven't looked what the weather's going to be like. It's gonna be nasty cold, but I just feel like the Bears aren't quite ready yet to make that to make it to the NFC Championship game. I think that they can do it, absolutely. I just feel like it's probably the Rams' season to make it there, considering how this season went for the Rams. So that's why I'm taking them too.
That would set up an awesome matchup in Levi's South if you guys end up winning. So that'd be super cool. And then we'll go over to the AFC. God, banger games coming up in the AFC. So Houston and New England. Who do you think is winning? Oh my God, I was trying to go with my defensive trends all year, but I was really impressed with what I saw from New England. I think they'll make it to the championship game.
I agree. I really like that Houston defense, though. D'Amico has done a fantastic job at just making those boys fly around, man. They look good. And I mean, it's easy to look good against 40-plus-year-old Aaron Rodgers and a Steelers team. Shout out Alex, love you, bro. But it's a tough game. It just cards were stacked against them in a lot of ways. But I think the Patriots have got it. and I had the Rams moving on at the beginning of it, and I've got the Patriots still in this one. I've got the Patriots making it to this, AFC Championship game. I feel good about them.
Heck yeah. Now the Bills and the Broncos, what a game. The Bills, the last time these two matched up in the playoffs was a different position, wild card round, and the Bills just waxed this team. But the Bills are hobbled and they're hurt, and they lost multiple dudes. It gave Davis and I forget the other guy who had the super great catch on Philadelphia, both tore their ACLs. So Josh is down to his practice squad guys. Like, this is a tough ask against a really great defense in the Broncos defense. Do I think he can do it? I think he can. And I want to pick Buffalo. I'm going to pick Buffalo. I think Josh has one special game left. And I know he's hobbled too. I know his ankle is a concern. But I think that they're going to rattle Denver in this spot. Denver was the one with the bye week, so they're going to, how ready are they for this spot? I trust Sean Payton. He's done it before. He's been there, done that. But Bo Nix in this spot hasn't won a playoff game yet, so this is a big prove-it moment for him, and this defense is going to have to try and stop Josh Allen. So I think I want to give it to Josh and his experience here. It's not Mahomes. It's not a bugaboo quarterback that, can outplay him. I think that, they can force Bo Nix to make some mistakes in this one. So I'm going to pick Buffalo in this one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start by saying I'm taking Denver. And the reason being, you mentioned those two injuries, and it just makes me think that Josh has got to play a little more hero ball in this one. And while he does that at an extremely high level, he also makes the mistakes at that level as well. Like when he's having to force things into certain windows and he's having to force whatever runs and so on, he kind of makes the mistakes. Not to say he's a bad quarterback. It's just kind of how it shakes down sometimes. And in considering that is why I feel I think the Broncos offense might struggle to kind of move the ball, but with Bo, there's just something that tells me Bo's going to feel comfortable in this one. He's playing in front of his home crowd, and that's going to be comfy in a lot of ways, considering it's your first playoff game and you get to play it at home versus playing it on the road. That would be a different story. So I feel good about Denver in this game. I just feel like Denver's got the upper hand. They are 1.5 point favorites in this one, which technically means that you want to pick the Bills, but I personally just feel good about Denver, and they were my pick to make it to the Super Bowl. So
they were my Super Bowl pick too, but I didn't expect. I thought they're going to be playing Jacksonville, and I felt more confident with them playing against Jacksonville than I do against Buffalo. And maybe because of all the injuries onto the receivers, maybe this is the game where they say, "Hey, we can't forget that James Cook exists, and we need to just get him touches however we can." He's a special player, so I think that he can make a difference too if they allow him to take over in this game. So yeah, that's going to be crazy. So we got our picks for the weekend set up, so we'll see how this all ends up. We'll see if the Niners can get through and have a date in the NFC Championship game, whether it's in Chicago or whether it's in LA. Regardless, the Niners are going on the road all the way to Levi's for the Super Bowl if they can make it. So, I feel great about this, but any final thoughts before we head out here, brother?
Bang, bang, Niner gang. Let's get it, man. I'm stoked. I hope there's a big part of me that hopes that Fred Warner is back.
Yeah.
I really do. It would be so special to see. But if he's not ready, do not push him back. That's all I ask, because you get the aura back already. But bang, bang, Niner gang, baby. I am so stoked for Saturday.
Yes, sir. Big opportunity coming up on Saturday. So with that being said, y'all, this was episode 117 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. All y'all watching on YouTube, we got our socials up above. For all y'all audio listeners out there, the links to the descriptions are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, and follow the show. A lot of big news. Hope the Niners win. That's what we're rooting for here on the BTB pod. One of these teams has to do something, has to get us going. Not to mention, BTB has a streak of their own. In the past, 3 years that we've been doing this, one of our teams has been the representative in the Super Bowl. So let's keep that BTB streak going. Get the Niners to the Super Bowl, baby. So with that being said, I am Marcos Conan Negron. Beside me here, as always, is
Ben the Jet Reds.
All right, y'all. We love y'all. We will talk to you next week.
Peace.